Now it's time for today's perspective on the programme. Got three letters for you. They're NBA. Now for many letters, that means excitement, thrills, power and skill. NBA is, of course, the National Basketball Association, massive in North America. Later this week, coming here to Paris. Two top-flight teams are battling it out away from their usual crowds to spread the brand, if you like, of the NBA around the world. And one of those who'll be there is my guest today, Lindsay Sarah Krasnoff. She's an historian and journalist and consultant working between sport and diplomacy, the author of several books, including The Making of Les Bleus, Sport in France, which traces France's quest, if you like, to create elite athletes in both football and in basketball as well. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So sport and diplomacy, why do you think there's a link? Is there a link? Why should there be a link?
There is a link, very much. We talk about the nexus of sport and diplomacy as the representation, communication, and negotiation that happens in and around the sports terrain. And when you think of that, it's just kind of a natural association. And as many of the world's professional sports leagues have globalized over the past several decades, you see that intersection ever more clearly and daily. What it's like for players to, talk amongst themselves in the locker rooms and ask each other, hey, so, what's that like back home? Or what's your favorite food? Or what is going on with politics or strikes in your home? And, they exchange informally. And as do fans and others in and around the terrain. But you also have more formal aspects of sports and diplomacy, usually involving either government-sponsored trips, things like the Olympics, and certainly national teams are part of that more formal sports and diplomacy nexus.
I mean, there are some people, though, that aren't there, who say sport and politics shouldn't mix. I mean, it becomes sport, if you like, caught up in the world of politics and business, and it's all about money and those kind of arguments.
Well, certainly, and you've always had those arguments, but the reality is sports and politics have always mixed as far back as the modern era when the modern sports field arose. You saw greater politicization of international sport starting in the post-World War I period when certain countries were not invited to the Olympics. And certainly many historians point to the 1936 Berlin Olympics, as well as some of the 1930s World Cups with Italy, fascist Italy, as kind of the incubators of the modern intersection of sports and politics on the global stage. So it's always been there. And certainly the Cold War facilitated a lot of those different initiatives, but in the post-Cold War world, you still see the intersection of sports and politics on a variety of different levels. And you take any headline over the past year, and you could usually find some angle in there.
And we got the NBA here in Paris this week. Why is that exciting?
Super exciting. Well, this is the first time that the NBA is playing a regular season game here in France. It's also the first time that the NBA has come back to France for a game of any sort, I think, in around a decade. I know that they used to play at what used to be Bercy, which has now been renovated, the Accor Arenas. And it's very exciting on numerous levels. First, France is one of the largest international cohorts in the NBA today. And so certainly trying to bring that marketability back to one of their home markets, but also as a new outlet for their European fans as well.
And presumably, if you're involved in sport, obviously, like you are, a lot of it now is also about making sure youngsters get involved in sport, right, and ensuring that the countries, encourage sport and bring people through so that they can finish up being the big stars of the future.
Oh, very much so. It gets back to what Billie Jean King has always said, you have to see it to be it. And by bringing the game here, very much, it's a way for fans of all ages to see it, to experience what an NBA game is like, which is a little bit different live than it is on TV. And especially to have these two teams coming, Charlotte with Nicolas Batum, captain of the French national team, and Milwaukee with the Greek Freak, one of the MVPs right now. I think it's a very exciting mix for the two teams.
And why do you think it's so important for countries like France, not just in basketball, but in football, for example, to really encourage people and spend money, if you like? Because it costs money, doesn't it? It costs the states money to really invest in people.
Well, You could take a variety of different looks towards it. The French state, for several decades, going back to 1975, has sought to encourage sport as a part of French culture. You could certainly make the argument how successful that is or is not. But it's a very different sort of endeavor today than it was back in the 1970s. There's greater involvement and activity at all different levels, which is good from health reasons to community reasons. Sport has, in France, long been a way to help build community, to help foster inclusion. It's been one of the more democratic terrains where anyone can advance based on their merit and what they can do, teamwork on the field.
Can tell from your accent as well, you're obviously American, and you used to work, didn't you, in America as well, trying to encourage sport there?
Yes, very much. I spent several years working for the U.S. Department of State, working as a historian, but certainly working very closely with my sports diplomacy colleagues there, very much trying to help to spread the word about sport as an enabler of diplomacy. It enables people to have those cultural one-on-one exchanges, to learn from actual people what it is like to be part of their country, their culture, and to really cut through a lot of the information that is out there in a very real way.
OK, well, if you've enjoyed listening to what Lindsay's had to say, you're going to be at the American Library, aren't you, later on here in Paris?
Yes, this evening.
What's that about? That's to do with the NBA, isn't it?
Yes, so I'm giving a talk based on an in-process book I'm working on the NBA's French connections, how and why those developed, and kind of helping to set the stage for the game later this week. OK, well, if you're in Paris, you never know, maybe something you want to go along to at the American Library. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us today. Lindsay Sarah Krasnoff here on France 24.